Hello and welcome to Artesian's webinar series, Meeting of Minds. I'm Lisa Hutt, Chief Marketing Officer at Artesian. We provide data, business insights and engagement tools that align your teams with the customer and their world. And today we've invited Bryn Tillman, who's Chief Learning Officer at PeopleLinks, along, as today Bryn has got some fabulous insights on how to take those chunks of information that you get and use those in your everyday life to engage intelligently as part of your daily routine. So Bryn has spent her career in sales and sales training. Over to you, Bryn. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Oh, thanks so much, Lisa. I'm so thrilled to be here and to be part of this Artesian webinar series because you really are bringing some great insights. And so I thank you for including me in this. Just a little background on how I got here and why I'm the one to talk about this. I've been in sales and sales training for my entire career. I started right out of college with a company called Dun & Bradstreet in an inbound call center, taking 100 to 120 calls every single day. And then I was promoted, or so they called it a promotion, because now I was making 80 cold calls outbound every day. But I did well enough there that I made it to the field where I really fell in love with sales because it was about building relationships. And I recall sitting across from one client staring at an overflowing Rolodex. That's how long ago this was. Everyone had a Rolodex on their desk. Thinking if I could get my hands on that for 20 minutes, I could identify who that client knew that I was looking to meet, ask for introductions, and they'd never have to make another cold call again. But in 1992, it was not politically correct to say, hey, Mr. Client, can I thumb through your address book? Fast forward 2 decades, however, that's what we've got with LinkedIn. It's this online Rolodex of our connections with the ability to filter and search and identify who in our network can help us gain access to decision makers and stakeholders we might not otherwise be able to access. So that's a lot of what we're going to talk about today, but that's really where this got started, and LinkedIn has gone so much further than that in its decade and a half of being alive. So I'm really excited to get started with you, Lisa.
Yes, yeah. We found the buyer journeys change dramatically over the years, and today they're just so much more educated. When they first engage with you, they've done all their research, and you really just have to be so much more on the ball. Well, one of the biggest things we've seen is that their expectations are that it's not about you selling them products and services anymore. What's been your findings, Bryn?
So that is so 100% what I'm seeing. I mean, we know the statistic from CEB that 57% of the buying decision is made before the supplier even knows they're in the market. But what does that actually mean? It means that they're doing a lot of the shopping without us. When I started at Dun & Bradstreet, the only way that client could get information was to either have a conversation with me or meet me face to face. That was it. There was no, and then I could mail information. There was no internet. There was no Googling. There was no research outside of talking with the sales rep. And that's where the buyer journey has completely shifted. So we might think, oh, well, that takes the power out of the sales rep's hands. But it really doesn't. It empowers us to provide better insights, better information, better education, so that we have credibility in the marketplace and we are the subject matter expert they're going to. The old mantra that we all grew up with was the know, like, and trust, right? This was like how you got to build a relationship with a prospect or a buyer. They got to know you. After they knew you for a little bit, they actually liked you, and then you earned their trust. Well, I think it's totally different now. I think it's about attracting them to you. So whether you're doing that proactively by reaching out, or because you've got great insights and content that you're sharing, or because you are commenting or adding extra information or insights to content they've shared, we are attracting them to us. And then once we've done that, we want to make sure we're teaching them. We're giving them insights, getting them thinking differently about their current job or company or even industry, and engaging with them. So engaging for me, there's a little engagement online, but real engagement is converting them to phone calls and meetings. So I think it's really important that we're breaking through, we're getting access into these stakeholders, and we're really providing value. And that's how we can align with the new buyer's journey.
Fabulous.
What do you think, Lisa?
Yeah, well, building credibility is probably the next thing on the list. And one of the things we found with our insights is that the frontline teams are using the information that they're getting on a daily basis as a means of engaging, which increases their credibility. But I know you've got some great tips around credibility building as well. So how do these complement each other?
So I love what Artesian is doing in helping provide those insights, and we're going to use those even more later. But one thing that we can do with those insights before we even engage is look at what matters to them. So that's a big piece before we get into even, we'll talk a little bit about branding in just a minute, but before we can begin to brand, we have to look at who are we branding to? What do they care about? And so like the insights that you provide can help gain kind of a look into what matters to your buyer. A lot of times we're stuck in our own, we have a pitch, we have a solution we want to talk about, and we don't take the time to leverage those insights. And once we've gleaned some of those, and we've gained some of those ideas around what matters to our buyer, we can start branding around them rather than just branding about what we want to talk to. And it has a complete shift in the way we are being seen. The goal of, so branding on LinkedIn is your profile. And the goal of that profile is to get more phone calls and to engage the right decision makers and get them curious and excited to have a conversation with you. But you can't get them curious until you know what matters to them. So those insights are really an important foundation before you even begin branding yourself. Once you know that, once you know what pains your prospects are really in, not the ones you're imagining, but the ones, the frustrations that they're really feeling, and you start there. Like you start with the value that you bring, the solutions that you bring, and really provide value. So just quickly when we go through this, we want to make sure that our headline is not just we're a sales rep at a company, but what are we doing? And my headline is transforming the way professionals grow their business through LinkedIn and social selling. What are you doing? What is the impact you're having on your prospects so that when they show up, you've piqued their curiosity. They want to learn more because they're relating to you. And then when they get down into your summary, it's not just about your years in business or your passion. It's really about that you recognize what, like for me, for you too, Lisa, it's the buyer's journey has changed, right? For other people, there are other things that have changed. If they're out there selling telephone systems or they're selling SaaS software, there are things in their industry that have changed that are creating pains inside of an organization. So you want to bring that to the surface. You want to provide insights, vendor agnostic education, that it gives you credibility that they now know that you are the subject matter expert because you know what you're talking about. So that's the stuff that makes up a really good branded social profile. And it's really about getting them credit, number one, to know that you're it, but number two, to really want to have a conversation because you've earned the right to have that. Does that make sense?
Absolutely, yes. So you've positioned yourself well, you've aligned yourself with their agenda, you've got yourself a great credible profile. We're going to have to get hold of the right people now, and I guess this is where you've gained your expertise in awards, Bryn. Tell us about it.
Oh, thank you. So gaining access to decision makers can happen in lots of different ways. You can reach out cold, but we know cold doesn't really work. So there's a very specific way to do that, which is provide thought leadership and education now beyond your profile, but through blog posts, through ebooks, through webinars, Provide information and education that's relevant, thought leadership that is relevant to your prospects. Remember, go back to what matters to them. Sometimes your product or service is not what gains their attention. One of the keys that we talk about a lot is talk a lot about, I call it before thinking. It's not a real phrase, I sort of just made it up. So before thinking is, what are they thinking about before they even need you? What are the conversations they're having internally before your product or service or solution even comes into the conversation? Because that's when you want to start their curiosity. That's where you want to pique them. So have content at their before thinking. You know, that will make a huge impact. So we can certainly find them on LinkedIn. It's one of the most powerful databases with search engines that are unbelievable to find the right decision makers. And you can certainly reach out. If you have, like Sales Navigator, for example, you can send emails or you can reach out with connection requests throughout. There are lots of different tools inside. But the other piece, which we started with when we talked about that Rolodex, is how are we leveraging our network? So how are we gaining access to decision makers through warm introductions from our clients and our network? It's very easy to mine these connections, but the key is don't just get an introduction blindly, like I'd like to introduce you to Bryn Tillman, she's really awesome, have a conversation. Make sure you're providing those insights inside of those introductions. So I notice my client knows a few people I want to meet, they agree to make an introduction, and the introduction is, I'd like to introduce you to Bryn Tillman. She has been of great value, and I wanted to share this article that she published with you and make this introduction. So they can now look at your profile and see your value, read a piece of content and gain some insights, and then ultimately take your call knowing that it's really well worth their time. And so that's gaining access to decision makers, but making sure that when you are doing that, you're positioning yourself as a thought leader. So, you know, these phone calls are not free for them. We think they are. Well, what's 15 minutes? Well, it's very valuable to some of these buyers, 15 minutes, 30-minute call. So you have to earn the right to get that, and it's thought leadership that gets you there.
Fantastic. That's really useful. And we've talked so far about the very infancy of the relationship, but as we all know, building a long-lasting relationship requires you to go beyond just those initial understanding and thought leadership. It's then about really aligning yourself with your prospects and customers and doing what's right by them. And you know, a regular flow of news and information helps you keep abreast of that, which is great. But you've got some other ideas about how to stay front of mind. Tell us about that, Bryn.
So engaging goes all the way through from the very top of the funnel to close, and even beyond to those client referrals really are post-close. So we've got to know how to engage all the way through. And we talked about the very top of the funnel when we're getting introductions, but we also want to look at, you know, where people are in their buying process. So we may connect with someone and they're not nearly ready for us, but in a year or two they may be. So we want to make sure that we are continuously sharing content that helps them to decide to pick us or to decide to move through that pipeline. Some of those insights might be around the problem with status quo, right? The risks that they're facing, or how to calculate ROI of making a change. So when you are providing content throughout that helps them move toward making a new buying decision, it's a win for them and it's a win for you. So that's something to consider. But there are lots of ways to stay in touch with them. You can send content directly to them. Content will go onto your news feed where they will occasionally see that. You can do other things like make meaningful introductions for them. That's a big deal. So a lot of these folks, they may not be ready to buy your stuff, but if you bring value in other ways, like connecting them, sometimes it's even connecting them with vendors. If you can, that not obviously non-competing vendors, but if you can make meaningful introductions that impact them when they are ready, it will be you. The other thing in building relationships is it's a plural. You don't want to just build one relationship inside of a company. LinkedIn's Mike Darzin talks about single-threaded versus multi-threaded, and I love this concept because single-threaded means I've got one person that I am focused on and I have a great relationship with them and I am relying 100% on that one person to close this deal. But one thing that LinkedIn talks about is, 1 out of 5, people are on average in a company for 5 years. So that means 1 out of 5 decision makers are leaving this year. So you have to be careful with that, right? You can put all your eggs in one basket and then it's done. So multi-threading is starting to identify, as CEB talks about, there are 5.4 decision makers on every single enterprise deal. Who are the titles that meet your 5.4? Maybe it's 7, whatever they are. Start to identify those people inside of the organization, and even though you still may have one person that you're primarily working with, make sure that you are providing insights and really building relationships with other people inside the organization as well.
Fantastic, yes. You've come up with some great ideas here, and it's a bit like a gym membership where you go in with, right, I'm going to do it this way from now on. And how do you keep going to the gym? How do you make this a daily routine and change your behaviors really, and the way you sort of wake up in the morning and the way you tackle the day, Bryn?
So you totally nailed that, Lisa. It is definitely behavioral changes that make the difference. And, you can join that gym, but if you don't show up, you're not getting in shape. So I love that analogy, right? I love that. So you really want to make sure you have a few things in place. We'll go into the takeaways in just a second, but the profile is absolutely foundational, and that's really once and done. Although you can continue to tweak it if you choose, you don't need to. It's worth investing the time, the energy, or even working with a professional to get it done, but get that done. The next thing is writing your welcome messages and your templates, your introduction templates, but your welcome messages, so that, which we didn't talk much about, but you want to make sure that you're engaging with every new person and you're either sharing content with them when you connect with them or you're asking for phone calls. So make sure you've got those messages in place so you're not retyping every single time. And I custom each one of them, but I start with a template. Make sure you're leveraging those client relationships we talked about, as well as your network and other non-competing vendors that you can make introductions for one another. And you want to share insights and engage with your connections. But in order for you to do this every day, you really want to, number one, schedule time. Because if you don't schedule time, it's not going to happen. And you want to make sure you don't fall into this random acts of social. Have a plan for yourself. Maybe it's once a week I'm going to choose a client, mine their connections, and ask for introductions. Maybe it's I'm going to share 3 pieces of content a week, and I'm going to write 2 original blog posts a month. Whatever it is, come up with your own little playbook, or hire a professional to help you put that playbook together. But make sure that you know exactly what you're going to do and what you're going to say every day. I mean, there's so many things like responding to who's viewed your profile, or responding to people that asked you to connect that you're on the fence about. So many things like that. You've got to, once you've come up with a solution, make sure it's repeatable and that every day you're going in and handling those activities. So that's how you do that.
Fantastic. It's a great summary. Thanks very much, Bryn. I think for any frontline team, creating that curiosity and aligning, with your targets so that you can build that long-term relationship is so important. So this has been a really valuable insight that we're looking forward to share with some other businesses. Thank you very much for your time. Is there anything else you wanted to add, Bryn? And I can see we've got your contact details up here. How do people get in touch?
Oh, well, thanks so much, Lisa. So I really enjoyed working with you, and I love Artesian and everything that you do to provide insights to sales reps. So I'm thrilled to have been part of this. I invite everybody to connect with me on LinkedIn. Please mention that you saw me on the Artesian webinar, and if you do, I will be very happy to send you some of my templates so you don't have to write them from scratch, to give you a start there. I'm on Twitter at Bryn Tillman, and I look forward to helping anyone and answering any questions you may have around LinkedIn and your particular pursuits. So thanks again, Lisa, for having me. I really appreciate it.
Bryn, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you very much indeed, and we hope you've all enjoyed these takeaways. We look forward to speaking to you soon. Cheerio.